Hello and welcome to another episode of the Move Forward Anyway podcast, featuring dream accelerating inspiration. As always, you can learn more about my Dream Accelerator coaching process at jeffmeyer.org. You can click on the Move Forward Anyway tab and watch all of these episodes in video form, or you can download wherever you like to get your podcasts from. I'm your host, author, entrepreneur, and coach, Jeff Meyer. Hey, fellow dreamers. Welcome to another episode. I'm so grateful that you are checking in on this episode of my podcast, Move Forward Anyway. And I have a special guest with me today, a friend, an entrepreneur, a risk taker of epic proportions, a New Englander, Paul Castigliano. And it's good to reconnect, brother, with you. It's been too long since we've last talked. Thank you so much for taking the opportunity to share a little bit about your dream and the pursuit that you've been on for these last, when was it when we were in Philly together? Was that 4 years ago already? My goodness.
At least 3 years.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years ago, we were roommates in Philly at an elite business intensive where we were both exploring and trying to build a plan to execute on our dream and to actually turn it into a monetary source of livelihood for ourselves. But more importantly than that, to actually make it a thriving business to bless others. And that's why I'm so excited about having Paul on today, is because what he's up to just really warms my heart, and it's so needed in all of our communities. Paul, thank you for being on. Tell us a little bit about Open Kitchens Project. Maybe start by just telling me, what is the most recent win that you've had? A success, something to celebrate, because, since March and the lockdowns and the pandemic, both of us have had to adjust and shape our dreams a little bit differently and respond to that pandemic. And so it's been really hard. It's been a hard season. So I want to start with a success. What do you have in terms of a story from your work that you'd like to celebrate today?
That's a great way to start. Yeah, thanks. Let me start with the success. I'm tempted to frame it around, all of the challenges over the last year. But I'll just say, so the heart of Open Kitchens is really bringing people together, across, diversity. And that could be, cultural diversity, or, ideas, or just in whatever way we individually identify with, a certain tribe or group, and then creating space for people to kind of meet people across that divide, and recognize that, there's a unity, not in, common thinking, but a unity in through our diversity. So a recent win is, just this week actually, is what we're offering now through several years of learning how to bring people together, particularly over food and cross culture, is offering our service to nonprofits and churches. So, creating space for people to be able to come together, to be able to have conversation. And we have a certain, structure to the conversations, and a certain structure to kind of the event. There's a purpose, a very specific purpose that we help organizers identify and then invite others into. So WIN is, there's 3 nonprofits that we're talking to right now, just this week, that all came up. We'll likely do 2 events in February and one shortly thereafter. And it's a new kind of area in which we're testing out, but
because I'm, being a leader of a church myself in Madison, the challenge to get people together and the way that organizations that used to have events that have to think about how to gather when they can't gather, you can actually offer a service to them to facilitate for them, almost like a third party, person that comes in and leads the conversation. I'd love to know, do you help those organizations figure out what the goal is for the conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you tell them what the goal is for the conversation?
Well, I mean, for kind of what we've learned over the last couple of years is really helping people connect. Really, I call it a next generation TED Talk. So TED Talks are inviting people to see the world in a new way through a one-to-many presentation. What we do is provide a structure that allows somebody who has a unique perspective on the world that they've learned through their own kind of life experience. We help them uncover what exactly that is, and then how they can invite others to see the world from their perspective, not from the organizer's perspective, but actually asking meaningful questions that help others to see the world differently through their own experiences. So, and we do that. So we help them kind of define this aha, this kind of valuable thing that they've discovered about the world. Create questions that invite people step by step into that aha through telling their own stories and experiences in small groups, either one-on-one or in kind of small gatherings. So everyone's sharing their own experiences and are learning from hearing other people's experiences.
Wow. So can you give me an example of an aha that someone shared in an environment pre-pandemic or post-pandemic? They shared an aha, and how did that group rally around that or engage with that?
Yeah, thanks. I love telling these stories because I could feel it right now. It's so satisfying.
Good.
So one was one of our early events, and it's these two women who belong to the same church started an organization to help provide free legal service to immigrants. And the Agency Alpha is the name of the organization. So I invited them to curate an event. One of my neighbors wanted to, they felt very passionate about this kind of immigration conversation. It was becoming hyper relevant and aware under the last administration. So they wanted to invite their friends and neighbors to this passion that's theirs around immigration. So these two women came and curated the conversation. Their aha was really around this idea of, how do I connect? Because I think there's a couple of different ways we think about immigrants in our country, legal and illegal, and do immigrants, are immigrants dragging us down, or are they building us up? It's kind of a dualistic perspective I think many of us hold around immigration from a bunch of different perspectives. So they really wanted to invite people to connect, to identify with the immigrant experience. And so the three questions that they asked, the first one was, what is community? And so they asked it in a one-to-many, so there was kind of popcorn answers. The second question was, how does community make you feel? And people talked about, it's work and neighborhoods and how lovely it is. And the third question, which is this kind of it's meant to create a cognitive dissonance, is why would you leave that community? And people were like, I wouldn't leave it. I just said how much I loved it. Like, why I wouldn't leave it. And she had to ask it 3 times, and people were like, oh, wait a minute. Like, if I had to leave it, why would I leave it? Well, it's because of finances, or I'm being harassed, or persecuted in some way. There's some dramatic reason why I'd want to leave this community that's beloved. And she summarized at the end. She says, there's 63 million people in migration around the globe today, and every single one of them had to answer that question that I just asked you as to why they would leave. And at the end, people came up and said, oh my word, I've never thought about it from that perspective. They're like, how can I get involved and try to be helpful in this problem? I hadn't even thought about it from that perspective. Can we meet every 2 weeks until we come up with some solid ways in which we could, practically be helpful?
So say that again, 63 million.
Yeah, people around the globe.
Are
in
had
migration.
to make that tough decision.
Yeah, currently, right now, there's 63 million. and it might be bigger. I don't know right now. This was about a year ago. She said, yeah, right now there's 63 people who are in migration, who are refugees, who are on the move, who've left their homes and their communities for one reason or another.
Yeah. Wow. So they were part of a community that they loved, and something dramatic happened to cause them to have to make a decision to leave. Wow. And now the desire for community it's part of the human condition, right? We all want to belong.
Yeah.
So where do I find that belonging? And I think that's what's so cool that I remember about sitting in the room with you in Philly, is this dream to help people belong. I mean, that's really the essence of what I remember you when you're talking about this open and using food, because food is a really important part of belonging, right? We table together. That's so important, to eat together and to share a meal together. So you haven't always been doing this, Paul. You've only been up to this for 4 years or so. Before the shift, you were in corporate America, right?
Yeah.
So what was the genesis of the dream? Why did you decide to leave a comfortable corporate regular paycheck, health insurance, the comfort of making good living, and pursue this, to working with immigrants and helping people find community? Yeah. You're nuts, man. Why would you do something like that?
That you're nuts. Like, I think about that many mornings. Yeah. Well, it's step by step, honestly, and it's connected with my faith journey, honestly, and my own kind of my own personal experience. So going through a divorce woke me up. It was like, oh, wait a minute, there's this is unjust. One day I have a house and I have a family, I have a daughter, and the next day, my bags are on my lawn, in front of my house, and the door is locked. That just felt like extreme injustice. It wasn't extreme injustice, honestly. I have lots of stories of that trauma. And it opened my eyes to the sense of, well, I didn't deserve this, and there's this whole system that's in place that is, kind of persecuting me. And I'll just say this, there is no justice in divorce, right? There's no way that life is going to be okay for everybody, because you're taking one household, splitting it into two. So, there's just no justice in that. But it allowed me to be able to see that, whoa, I thought my whole life, I deserved what I had, and it was good. And, but then suddenly I saw, whoa, there's this injustice, injustice exists in the world. And it opened my eyes to see other injustice in the world. This idea that, America is a meritocracy, and if you work hard, you're going to succeed. And if you didn't, then the reverse is true. You either made poor choices, or, you didn't work hard. You get what you deserve, kind of a thing. And I realized, no, actually, this opened my eyes to see that that's not the case. So if that's not the case, I could suddenly see other injustices that were going on. And this idea of immigration was a part of it. My father was an Italian immigrant, first generation. And, and I know that, he wouldn't say, he's funny. I don't think he would say that there was a hardship in that, but the stories that I heard, it was hardship, in coming to another country. And yeah, and then it's step by step. I worked for a nonprofit that was focused on building diverse community, and got to know immigrants, and I would go into this community, and Bangladeshis and Ethiopian folks from different places around the world, and every time I went there, the woman would say, "Eat, sit down, have something to eat," and I was like, okay. And so I'm enjoying this food from around the world, and I'm like, people in my corporate world would love that. I wonder if and they have wealth. I wonder if there's a way that, that wealth could be connected to, a beautiful, amazing food and experience. And I also saw that as I got to know people in that immigrant community, like they saw the world in a unique way, which was beautiful and unique. And I thought that's of value to people who are stuck in this kind of like grind. So
through pain, I write about this in my book, that sometimes dreams are birthed out of pain and loss. They're not necessarily always born out of a happy part of our lives, and sometimes it takes loss to help us open our eyes and see things from a different perspective, and being able to lean into that and discover what my part in that is going to be. So you decided somewhere along the line to just pack your bags in corporate America and start this venture.
yeah. And as I walked out each, and it was a faith journey. So, I use the analogy of being, going further and further out on this smaller and smaller branch, as I stepped out and experienced something meaningful. I wouldn't say awesome necessarily. I mean, it might have been, but it was meaningful. Like it might have included suffering, but it was meaningful, or it was awesome. But, as I gained confidence and going further and further out on the limb. But one of the thoughts too that just comes to mind is, like my new dawning awareness wasn't well received. Like it wasn't like, wow, Paul, like this new awareness that you have of the world. Wow, tell me about it, bring it in, like this, what goodness. No, there was a lot of like pushback from my family and friends and like, that's crazy. But then over time, there's like, it's like finding your tribe. It's like finding your space. People start to listen, over time. And then it's deciding, do I want to listen to those voices that say I have something valuable to offer or not? And then I start to test it, and it's satisfying, and then it's painful, and it's satisfying and painful anyway.
Talk to me about the resistance to listen to the people that are encouraging you. Why would we as entrepreneurs ever want to not listen to, hey, Paul, that's a great idea? Why would we ever want to resist that? I have an answer in my own life, but I want to hear your answer.
Yeah. And I'm interested in hearing, and maybe it's aligned. I don't know. I mean, mine is, well, anybody could do what I do, is the first thought. And then I come to the realization of, no, this is actually pretty unique. I could buy that this is unique. And then the next thought is, which is where I am quite often now, is, yeah, it's unique, but is it unique in a kind of crazy Uncle Joe kind of way, or is it unique in a way that offers something valuable? And that crazy Uncle Joe thought is on my mind quite often. So yeah, they think it's good, but it's like mom loves my singing,
Yes.
kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Like,
so I'm gonna go try out for American Idol because mommy likes my singing.
That's the thought.
And you're the one that has to invest and work it, and overcome the hurdles and the barriers, and not the people who are saying it's a good idea. And so I guess I asked the question because for those of us who are watching this or listening to this podcast, and maybe you have an idea, you have a spark in your heart about something you want to do, that you're feeling called to, but it's a little edgy, and it's going to call for some risk. You may be experiencing some fear and some anxiety around it. You may be experiencing self-doubt. Imposter syndrome is huge. Like, if I do this and talk about community and relationships, and someone finds out that I'm just as messed up as the next person, they're going to say, hey, you're not any different. I mean, I struggle with that writing a book. Like, people read this are going to find out that I don't live all of this out perfectly that I'm talking about in the book. I'm an imposter. I called all those things second voices. And boy, do they come up, right? The second voice that tries to talk us out of the idea, or talk us out of the pursuit or the next step, telling us like you said, a couple really common ones are, oh, someone else can do this way better than me, or
Mhm.
someone else has already done this. So what am I doing it for? Or do I have the chops to carry it
Mhm.
off, make it happen? I don't know enough, so I just, I am so thankful that you have taken the steps and you're continuing to take the steps and made the decision to go for it in spite of all the emotions that stirred and continues to stir in you. Um, I always think about dreams. A lot of times, dreams are created out of a problem that exists. There's a problem that exists, and the entrepreneur, the dreamer, thinks, "I need to do something to fix that or to solve it." What is the problem that Open Kitchens is solving? You talked about community. What's the problem? Injustice. Are there other problems that Open Kitchens is solving?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as I mean, our whole focus to start was bringing people together face to face, over a meal, and this kind of taking this kind of ancient approach to connection, with a modern twist, with this idea of connecting people via reputation online. Um, and the problem being really this, like, so what is the problem? And as we're continuing to, adjust because nobody's getting together face to face now.
Yeah.
So what's relevant in what we're doing, if anything, and I feel continued encouragement to keep going. So anyway, I guess I'm probably saying that all out of self-protection, providing this kind of context, but it's a relevant question. It's one that I just went for a walk with my partner yesterday. It's one that we're continuing to look at, and I think it's the conclusion that I'm coming to is really it's this one of dignity. Um, do each one of us have a value, and how is that value defined?
Mm-hmm.
Is the value defined based upon our bank account, or is our value defined? So what is the problem? The problem is um, where do I find my value? So if I'm looking to my bank account or my job title or the company I'm working for or the tribe that I belong to, for my value, how solid is that? Like the whole world has been shaken with this pandemic.
Mm.
So how can we create other ways, other systems, new ways of us kind of finding our value, our voice, our and bring it to the world. So yeah.
Wow.
So at
That, that
core,
that is a lofty problem. I mean, that is a lofty
yeah,
goal to solve that problem.
yeah,
You're not inventing you're not inventing a zipper or a button to solve, you're not creating a widget that solves a problem, um, which are great. I thank God for all the inventions that help make our lives easier. But you're talking about a soul deep problem in trying to provide the context for the solution to be discovered for each person, and that's a huge task. And so you talk about being an intense individual and um, you know really thinking deeply about things. I think it takes someone like you to be able to make a dent in this problem, right?
yes.
Yes.
And the thought that comes to mind is, again, self-protecting here, is is recognizing with humility that is a huge problem, and it's not mine to own, but it's like, what part of that can I be helpful with? You know,
Yes.
um, I like 2, 3 years ago when we were getting started, with these kind of gatherings, there were very few opportunities outside of kind of social media that were available for people to kind of gather. I mean, social media and church and faith communities. Um, and now there's more, spaces for people to be able to gather and connect. And so constantly asking myself, so what is my unique story, my unique value? How can I package that? What's the vehicle for me to bring about, bring a blessing to the world? Yeah.
You have inevitably faced challenges. Every dreamer, every successful dreamer does. Every entrepreneurial venture has challenges and barriers. What have been some of your biggest challenges and barriers since the inception of this, when you decided to go for it?
Um, it's like every step of the way. It only, I've heard people talk about, hey, only using curse words when extra emphasis is needed. So I'm getting all kinds of curse words flash into my mind because the emphasis, I'm looking for emphasis, man. It's like every step of the way, like just when, oh yeah, like we figured out something that works, like, something blows up, and talk about like, so, and I'm also very careful. Like I don't want to set expectations too high. I want to test everything. So there was a long season of, informational interviews. What is the vehicle? How do we define it? And then once we had a vehicle, it's like, how do we test it to see if anybody would care about it, whether they love me or not? And then how do people beyond who I know, do they see value in it? And then how do we grow? So just for example, like the beginning of last year, we started at our live event, started seeing more and more people show up. We had at our last event before the pandemic hit, we had 70 people show up, which for us felt really satisfying. We could see some growth and some trajectory. I had my business plan, sustainable by summer, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah.
And then a global pandemic hits, just for example.
For example.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A global pandemic. I mean, if we would have been sitting in Philly together trying to stretch out our dream scenario, build our business plan, right? We held each other accountable for a while there afterwards. And if I would have introduced us, so how does your plan take into account the possibility of a global pandemic?
Yeah.
You looked at me and said, what?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. You can't make this stuff up. Yeah. No, yeah.
Oh. So how do you keep moving forward anyway?
Yeah. That is a great question. And I ask myself that, honestly, I ask that question every day, every morning as I'm praying, and then meditating. It's like, all right, what am I meant to do today? And I after we shut down in March, there was a season, because I had my financing all, kind of focused on, my business plan,
right.
and so when that hit, it was like the worst possible moment. My friends and family round was just coming to a conclusion. And anyway, so there was a season of grieving, like, deep grieving, like mixed with panic, honestly. And and then, and then the pandemic unemployment assistance, became a reality. And honestly, in the midst of that, prayer has been maybe similar. I could view it similar to like a what's that antidepressant drug that you take when you need it in an emergency? Prozac or something like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's this idea of like, oh, like I'm panic, and then I like, what's the way through? And then through prayer, meditation, it's, where's the answer? And then gaining some level of peace, that I'm bringing myself to the table. This is my reality. But all to say is like, the way I keep going is, through meditation, contemplation, prayer. For me, I call it prayer. And I do have context for a living God, who connects us all, this collective unconscious. And so I rely upon that. I make these decisions intuitively, and I kind of lean on making decisions based on what brings me peace. And so there was a long season of grieving. I didn't want to just jump into what I saw a lot of others who were doing in-person events doing, which was just bring it into a Zoom call, and keep going. And we did try it out eventually, over the summer. To be honest with you, it wasn't as magical as the live events. The live events were really, really magical. I mean,
Right.
People consistently walked out like, this is unbelievable. And then they come back again and again. And so the Zoom calls didn't have that kind of magic. And so that was discouraging. And so then this idea of, well, maybe we could package what we learned and be helpful for organizations that want to connect with groups of people who don't know one another. And, and so churches is one, nonprofits is another, bringing their donors together. Another is consumer brands that are focused around lifestyle, bringing their groups together. So that's kind of where we're landing. I've been doing training for organizations that want to train leaders to have these kind of connective, gatherings, small group gatherings, where they invite people to be able, who are kind of on the fringes to be able to engage. So I'll just take a breath there. I can tell you what we're going to do next.
Have there been any positives of the pandemic to your business plan? Has there been any positive as a result of the global pandemic hitting and shutting down your plan?
Yeah, I think so, actually, in an odd sort of way. Like the thing that I started contemplating early on was, okay, so, there's this pandemic. What would I have not seen if there wasn't a pandemic? Like, what about the way I'm envisioning the problem or the solution, what we're delivering? Like, what would I have not seen if there wasn't a global pandemic? And there's been a lot of insight that's come from that. And one is ways in which I'm tempted to hide. Oh, we'll do this just to test, just to see what happens. Not to test, but really, we'll try this as a way of leading to that versus just going for that. And just recognizing that, that is what I'm really after. Like, that's the essence of what I want to do. So, it really was clarifying, I guess, in a way.
Do you have, you mentioned prayer as a help and meditation, connecting with the living God that kind of breathes peace and helps you guide your decisions based on that as a helpful piece to move forward anyway. What else? Like, are there people that have been really important? Have there been investors that have helped financially so you can keep risking moving forward anyway? What are some other things that might help people on this, listen to this podcast, feeling like they want to give up, where they could search out for support?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think a big one, and this is just reinforced this week actually, is connecting with people who are I mean, I would incorporate, in my network kind of a thing, but it's really beyond that. It's people who are in this, who share a similar vision or have experience in the space, not just experience in a practical sort of way, like I want to open up a gas station, so I'm going to talk to other gas station owners, but really it's people who are trying to solve the problem in kind of unique ways. And like Priya Parker, for example, wrote The Art of Gathering, and she's just deeply insightful. And I likely won't have a conversation with her, but I look at what is her experience, what are credentials that she has, what kind of background does she have, what communities is she part of, and and kind of learn from those. There's other people who are closer to my network who I have talked to. Like, I just talked to this really cool guy on earlier in the week, and he's like, I don't know, the way I think about it is there's people who I've been trying to talk to for years and who never had time for me. all of a sudden now in a pandemic, suddenly they have time and I'm able to connect with those people. And, not everything, he says 95% of my business dried up in a week, at the start of the pandemic and hasn't returned, so I'm trying to figure out, so I'm just talking to lots of people, making new relationships, existing relationships. I've got lots of weekly or biweekly or monthly calls with folks on the one hand. And then on the other hand, I'm just reaching out to new folks and saying, what are you up to? Like, how are you making it work? What do you envision? Like,
yeah. And I think our conversation right now is a similar conversation. It's been a while since we've talked, and maybe we can provide encouragement to each other. So, I think it's a great reminder for us as entrepreneurs, is especially those of us who are introverts, that it's really important to stay connected, and keep the conversation going with others who can really provide some insight for us, and discover some partnerships where they might be available too to help us. I think the partnerships that you've searched out with nonprofits and churches and other people who are struggling to try to figure out, now it takes even more intentionality to get people to gather and connect. They need your help, man. They need help to learn how to talk about the deep things of life. So your intense introspective self is really needed in the world today, brother. And I'm grateful that you haven't given up. I want to ask a real practical question, if I could. That is, sometimes with entrepreneurial, when I work with entrepreneurs in my Dream Accelerator, there's an idea someone has that will solve a problem that is very difficult to think about how to monetize. So I'm sure you were there at some point with this, like, how can I make a living doing this? How can I survive doing this in our American culture? I've had a lot of people just dismiss dreams out of hand because there's not an easy, how do I get paid? And so let me just ask that real practical question. I know that you didn't get into this for the checking account, but I also know that you need to live and you need to provide for your daughter and yourself and others. So how have you monetized getting people to come together and enjoy food? I think there might be a valuable lesson in here for some people who are listening.
Yeah, that's such a great question. There's a couple of different ways that's bouncing around in my head as to how to answer it. I think two things come to mind. One, just briefly, is resetting expectations, right? Like, I remember thinking, I can't, I can't do this because, I need at least 10,000 a month, like, to live, to cover my expenses and stuff. So how do I go from 0 to 10,000 a month, in the next 6 months or a year or whatever, So one is resetting expectations about what you actually need, to live. And so I don't need 10,000 a month anymore. And then the other one is nowhere near that. Just to be practical, like it's 2,000 a month is what I'm living on now. So just to be plain about it. And so that's one. And then the other one is being really, like, a lot of innovation could come around pricing and packaging. There's the classic 5 Ps in marketing. So being creative around pricing and packaging, I've spent a lot of time thinking about how pricing and packaging, creative ways of pricing and packaging, can lead me to get, $100 here, $500 there. And And this is honestly, this is the place I am right now. Even over the last few years, I've done my projections based on, all right, I don't need a ton of money right now. We're going to price and package it, based upon, scale, 5,000 people being engaged with the project, or, whatever, so at, month 3, we'll break even and be able to, pull a living wage out of it. I like right now, I'm at this place of, no, I need money like right now. So how am I going to get $500 or $100, or, can I package up, just being really, it's gotten really real for me. Like if I want to continue with the project, that's the place that I need to be right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I thought about, I could, get funding or something like that, but I don't really want to do that. And I'm feeling real encouragement to just, be laser practical.
You mentioned the 5 P's of marketing. What are those?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I can remember. Price, packaging, positioning, promotion, and one other one. I can't remember.
Sorry to put you on the spot. I'm just
No,
very
no,
interested in that.
I've learned to be.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about creating an offer, right? How does the offer get? And the offer is more than just the one thing. There might be the event, but then there might be follow-up conversations as a part of that package. There's also the opportunity for membership, like being part of the membership of a local community that continues to gather and support each other. I have just let me share this quick story. We've got a guy here in Madison who runs a restaurant, and it's been closed since March 10th. Wow. Basically, and he hasn't reopened because he wants to provide safety for the community. Well, he has done so many different things to continue to provide good food. It's Liliana's restaurant in Madison, and it's a Louisiana cuisine. And my family purchased, my daughters, I have 4 daughters, they purchased a Christmas present for Amy and I. And it was a cooking session together where he sent each of our households, we all live separately now, my girls are adult children, and they all got a package of food for the meal that we were going to prepare together. He got on a Zoom call with us that night, and we spent 2.5 hours preparing this wonderful meal together. And he showed us how to do it, how to prepare it. He had a Facebook portal in his kitchen, and he was cooking it up along with us. And we were all on separate Zoom calls, and we had the most wonderful meal and celebrate each other. And what's really cool about that, Paul, is that after that, my girls said, we need to keep doing this. Mm-hmm. Not paying him for it anymore, but we need to do this as a family. So that's part of the creative packaging. You can't go to enjoy the meal at the restaurant anymore, but he can help you prepare a good meal and bring the family together. And I think there's some beauty in that probably wouldn't have happened before the pandemic.
Yeah, totally. This idea of, I mean, I recognize ways, just to riff off that, I recognize ways in which I used to go to a Red Sox game and feel like, I'm in community, or even just like swing by the ice cream place, on the way home, like, I'm feeling like I need connection and sweetness. And anyway, but there is going to be, I believe, like right now we're experiencing it, and I think it'll continue, is being much more intentional about connection. Am I going to be satisfied with being one of 10,000 people in a stadium? When I've discovered there's these other ways to kind of connect at a much more intimate level. And I just one more aside. So the guy I talked with earlier this week, who's got this beautiful, uplifting spirit and, lighthearted and just, Chef Kabui is his name. And he's from Kenya. And he's got these, so he spoke at the event last year where 70 folks came to during Black History Month. And he shared these stories of, hardship, his father's friends all being massacred and him surviving that massacre in Kenya. and then, the village coming together and funding him to come to the United States to come to school. And then he gets his girlfriend pregnant. Anyway, he's got a million stories, and all very hope-filled. And so I mentioned 95% of his business went away, and he decides to start a farm in Kenya, with the goal of helping young men and women starting their own food businesses, connected through this farm and a retreat center. And so he's just super inspiring. So we're actually going to do a 1-year anniversary of this event we did last year, and it's going to be a cooking class, actually. Nice. So he's going to walk people through, cooking a classic Kenyan, food, and we may mail unique spices to folks ahead of time, but certainly the recipe and the shopping list ahead of time, and then he'll take us through, creating a Kenyan meal. So we're going to do that in February, a 1-year anniversary. And he's just so amazing, like in terms of an inspiring speaker on Black history and on, the value of food and how food is a part of our cultures, and how when we share, food, it's sharing culture. And it's just like that event last year was so inspiring. And I'm looking forward to doing it again this year. Online.
Well, so let me close with that then. Tell us where we can find out more about this event. Is it a local event or is it a nationwide event?
Well, it'll be international actually, because it'll be a Zoom, and he's going to do it from his kitchen.
In Kenya?
He lives in North Carolina.
Okay.
And, So he's going to do it from North Carolina. It's going to be a Zoom call. We're going to be able to mail. We won't mail all of the ingredients. There'll be a shopping list that folks can buy ahead of time. There may be unique spices that we mail. But yeah, so anybody certainly across the U.S. can join in.
Will that be on your website?
And that'll be on our website, yeah.
Awesome.
OpenKitchensProject.com.
OpenKitchensProject.com.
Yeah. So this was just happened a few days ago.
Paul Castigliano. Go ahead.
Sorry, this just came up this week. I mean, this is one of those connective calls, and who knows where it leads. In this case, it led to this we're going to do another event. So it'll be up next week.
Right? The grand experiment continues. And hold on loosely to our plans and see what emerges as we keep taking steps. Wow. Well, it is a blessing to talk to you. I hope that everybody on this call has taken away 1 or 2 nuggets that encourages them in their journey. And I appreciate your courage. You're one of the most courageous men I know. I know you'll deflect that, but you are. And I always enjoy talking to you. Thanks for taking the time, brother. Again, Paul Castigliano, first time I met him, Castiglione is how I pronounced it. And he goes, no, it's Castiglione.
Yeah, the Italian.
The Italian.
Always yo.
Yeah. The crazy Uncle Joe. Who I'll never forget the day I lost my wallet in Philly, and how you just walked alongside of me and encouraged me, brother. You are such an encouragement to so many. And I found my wallet, so it was all good, but
I remember that. Yeah. Jeff, I appreciate you. You're so lighthearted. I know you don't see that, but man, you got me laughing. I've enjoyed knowing you, man.
Good. Well, we need to laugh more, there's no doubt. Well, thanks again for watching, and look forward to connecting with all of you on our next episode. Thanks again, Paul.
Thank you, Jeff.
Hey, fellow dreamer. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Head over to my website, jeffmeyer.org, for all the show notes and links. And remember, fear will come, fear will stay. Move forward anyway.